A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. It is a period of renewed hope for the rebellion. With the Imperial forces in disarray, the rebels look to press their advantage, hoping to defeat the Empire once and for all, and at last restore freedom to the galaxy. Today on the Comic Book Report, Star Wars by Jason Aaron Omnibus. Stick around and check it out. Greetings from a galaxy far, far away, everyone. My name is Dominic, and you're watching The Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back in the wonderful world of Star Wars comics with the Jason Aaron Star Wars Omnibus. And if you like what you see in today's video, please check out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. Use my promo code, TheComicBookReport, to receive $2 off of your order at checkout. Using my affiliate link or codes will give me a small commission on any of your purchases at no cost to you. And it's a great way to support the channel. Thank you for considering. Now let's get started with today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Jason Aaron and illustrated primarily by John Cassaday, Stuart Immonen, and others. The issues in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2015. The volume itself collects Star Wars, the 2015 series, issues 1 through 37, Star Wars Vader Down, issue 1, Darth Vader, the 2015 series, issues 13 through 15, Star Wars The Screaming Citadel, issue 1, Star Wars Dr. Aphra, issues 7 and 8, and Star Wars Annuals, issues 1 through 3. And finally, this oversized hardcover edition comes in at 1,192 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and now it's time to take a look at our collection, the Jason Aaron Star Wars Omnibus. And right from the jump, you can see I got the Master Yoda cover. This is one of the 2 direct market covers available for the Star Wars Jason Aaron Omnibus. I will go ahead and throw up a quick picture of the other direct market cover for the title, another really amazing design. And then, of course, there is also the standard edition cover for this omnibus, which I will also show you to give you a quick comparison of the covers available for this collection. And after finishing up our look at that nice stylized spine, we'll go ahead and transition to the back cover of this dust jacket. I really enjoy the art on the back cover as well, getting to see Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and of course Princess Leia. The art in this collection is absolutely stunning and something I'll get into a little bit in this video. And now that we've done the quick looks, I will go ahead and take off the actual dust jacket so you can get one final look at this direct market dust jacket. Like I said, I'm really happy with the Master Yoda cover. It is very cool, but the other options are also phenomenal. I don't think that there's a bad pick in the bunch for this particular omnibus. And if you have this collection already, let me know which cover you got. And now that we've finished taking our look at the dust jacket, we can actually take a look at the hardback book itself. The Under the Dust Jacket art for this collection is one of my favorites in my entire comic book collection. The art is very evocative of the actual Star Wars movie posters. You'd see it like the movie theaters, that kind of painted, realistic style. I really love it, and the art on this hardback is actually a wraparound cover, which is absolutely jaw-dropping. And let me just go ahead and get a good grip on it, and I will show you that wraparound cover now. Just an incredible piece of art, and the fact that this is printed on the book itself, just a masterstroke from Marvel Comics, and something I really enjoy in the collection. Very well done. And finally, before jumping into the content of the book itself, I did want to take a quick look at the book's binding. Now, it is sewn binding, and as you'll see, there is a bit of an eye in the book, which is pretty fantastic. This is a large book, coming in at just under 1,200 pages, so we do get some gutter loss with this binding. However, I found the binding to be quite strong. Like I said, there's a good little eye, but a little gutter loss is to more or less be expected with a collection like this. But I really have no complaints here. And just like that, we are off to the races. Let's go ahead and dive into this omnibus collection. Right from the jump, the front matter is fantastic. I love all the stylized Star Wars fonts, the big Star Wars logo, the long time ago in the galaxy far, far away, and even the scrolling text through space. Everything that started this omnibus just right away immersed me in my love for this franchise. And just to make sure I don't bury the lead, this was an absolute win for me. I will admit I am a fan of the Star Wars universe. I have seen all the movies, and I've watched a lot of the animated and live action series that tie into this universe. As far as the comics go, I have not read many. I've reviewed them on my channel. I have read War of the Bounty Hunters. I also read its sequel, Crimson Reign, and I read the first arc from Charles Soule's Darth Vader run. All of which I did enjoy. Like I said, I've reviewed them on the channel before, but outside of that, I really haven't read any of the Star Wars comics. I haven't read any of the Star Wars Legends material, which is pre the Disney takeover. But like the other titles I mentioned, along with this omnibus here, this is canonical Star Wars post the Disney buyout, so this is supposedly what happened in universe between episodes 4 and 5. So between the movies, Star Wars A New Hope, and The Empire Strikes Back. And I have to say, that was a real narrative sweet spot for Jason Aaron. I came in a little bit hesitant about this comic run, just because I'm such a fan of the original film trilogy, and I hoped against hoped that I would walk away from this omnibus feeling like this did a service to some of my most beloved fictional characters. And I have to say, I walked away very satisfied. Like I mentioned, these stories pick up after the events of A New Hope. The Death Star has just been recently destroyed by Luke Skywalker. However, Darth Vader and the rest of the Empire don't know the name of the pilot. They don't know who he is. But Vader has made it his quest to figure it out and to hunt him down. Meanwhile, Luke Skywalker himself, you may think would be resting on his laurels after this big victory. However, the character we are presented with by Jason Aaron during this period almost feels as if the Death Star destruction was almost more of a stroke of luck than anything. We have this Luke Skywalker that just really sees it as one battle in the midst of a war, and he feels woefully unprepared to be the Jedi Knight he knows he must be. So we see the character deal with some degree of insecurity, and I really loved that approach. I think a lesser writer might have taken the opportunity to have a more prideful Luke, or a Luke that was kind of, again, resting on those laurels and the past victories. But instead, we have a deeply conflicted character that feels out of place, almost like he's not quite who he needs to be yet, even though he is so celebrated by everyone else in the rebellion. This collection as well is a very good bridge in the Han Solo and Princess Leia relationship. From the more teasing platonic relationship we see in A New Hope, to the more flirty and romantic nature of their relationship in Empire Strikes Back. I love that this collection kind of played with their flirtation and kind of teasing animosity, and gave them a lot of character moments that didn't jump the gun on their romance necessarily, but it makes the kind of flirty relationship between them in Empire Strikes Back feel like it has much more of a context and understanding. One of the biggest compliments I can give to this run as a whole is that these characters feel true to themselves. I really did feel like Luke Skywalker may as well have just walked off of the silver screen and into this comic book page. And I can say the same for Han Solo, Princess Leia, C-3PO, R2-D2, and yes, even Darth Vader. The character voices seem absolutely true, and the motivations feel authentic and earned, with all of their actions and in the dialogue. I think what absolutely compounds this level of authenticity, though, is the incredible artwork from artists such as John Cassaday and Stuart Immonen. They really went for the true likenesses as seen by the actors in those films to depict them in this comic book as best they could. And there is this realistic aspect to them where Han Solo looks like Harrison Ford, and so forth. That degree of artistic fidelity, along with just the incredible scene-capturing scope of this epic, really helped with the immersion for this title overall. These characters feel, sound, and look like their movie counterparts. But honestly, it's even more than that. One of the things I've always loved about Star Wars, especially the original trilogy, is I felt like we didn't always pick up the adventure right where the last one let off. I always felt like these movies were just the snapshot adventures that we got in an otherwise very long and more adventured life. So the novel approach that this comic has is it retains that same quality. Each of the, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 story arcs as seen in this omnibus all pick up at a certain place in time within that time window I already mentioned before, and it's like, hey, here's where these characters are now, here's where they find themselves, this is how they're battling against the Empire here, this is where they're searching for meaning or character growth here, and here is just another example of them traveling through the galaxy, getting into mischief and hijinks, and them kind of trying to overcome as individuals and a team. The way all of these story arcs are laid out, it really does feel like, hey, this is Star Wars Episode 4.1, 4.2. Rather than having this be a side, standalone tie-in of some kind, these feel like their own self-contained adventures that they could have just as easily adapted into feature films at the time, should they have chosen to do so. And that is an incredible high compliment that I could give for a book like this, to feel like you could slot it right into the other canon works within this franchise. It is obvious to me that this had to be a passion project for so many involved, including Jason Aaron, because this feels so authentically Star Wars. I don't feel like it's missing a beat. And as an artist, I have read some of Jason Aaron's other work, which I have also thoroughly enjoyed. But the voice here is completely different. The voice here is Star Wars, and that is incredible. The kind of chameleon-like quality that Jason pulls off in this work is absolutely outstanding. To have this as an addition to the Star Wars canon is a welcome inclusion in my eyes. And like I mentioned, the art in here just blows me away. And there are several different artists on these books, but overall, the overquality is realistic and very immersive. Like I said, all the different settings, all the different colorful science fiction characters and technologies are all fully formed and amazing to look at. Another thing about this omnibus that I really enjoy is that in addition to all of these Star Wars comic specific storylines that are included, there are also a couple of crossover Star Wars events, and we get all of the tie-in issues needed to complete the plot lines. In the case of the Darth Vader issues and the Dr. Aphra issues we see thrown into this omnibus. And I think that that's an incredible way to preserve the entire narrative and plot of these storylines without feeling like I also have to go out and buy a Dr. Aphra book. Although after reading this title and really getting to know that character a little bit more, I just may need to. Also is included the one-shot issues that tie into some of those crossover stories I mentioned. The Screaming Citadel issue and the Vader Down issue were also treated to a few annuals. Like I said, this just has it all, and it is the entirety of Jason Aaron's run on Star Wars. I do believe this series continued on under another author, but this book contains again all of Jason Aaron's contributions to this work. Another note I want to make as well, as someone who hasn't read an overwhelming amount of Star Wars comics himself, but is just a fan of the movies, I do think that this is a perfectly serviceable jumping on point or entry point for any prospective Star Wars comic fan out there. I don't think you really need to read or know anything beyond the few movies, or even just the first Star Wars movie, Episode 4, A New Hope. I think with that as a background, everything else is provided here and falls into place. Of course, if you know the rest of the Skywalker saga and some of the other details of the Star Wars universe, or even some of the other comic book titles canonically going on in the Star Wars universe at this time, it's only going to enrich your experience of this book, but I don't think a ton is required. It's a pretty low barrier to entry to enjoy this entire omnibus. So that's really my broad overview of the series as a whole and this entire Jason Aaron run. At this point, I've given you a brief idea of where the story is set, kind of the main players and characters, the book contents, and some comments on the art you'll expect throughout. Now I'd like to go ahead and transition into talking more about some of the specific storylines of this omnibus, and I'm really excited to dive in. The first story arc is called Skywalker Strikes, and it basically involves the team of heroes trying to infiltrate a Empire-driven weapons depot, only to find out it's also sort of a slave, human trafficking kind of compound. So Skywalker, Han Solo, and Princess Leia try to liberate the captives, only to have Darth Vader and other Imperial troops kind of try to show up, intervene, and stop them. It's a really action-packed bang to start off this whole comic book run. And right away, we also get a setup of the Luke Skywalker-Darth Vader relationship, which is a recurring kind of plot device and character dynamic we'll see throughout the entire omnibus. At this stage, we have to remember Luke does not know that Vader is his father. He hasn't really encountered Vader a ton directly, and Vader doesn't even know who he is. He just knows of a rebel pilot who destroyed the Death Star. But even in this first arc, we begin to see that Vader feels like this pilot is force sensitive, that there's something more to this character here, and he has a lightsaber. There's even a duel in that first arc. That's crazy. After that point, we find out that Vader hires Boba Fett to track down that pilot to get more information. We have Luke Skywalker going back to Obi-Wan's home on Tatooine to see if he left him any notes or any clues or anything pointing him into the direction of future Jedi training. While he's in the home, he is attacked by Boba Fett. A battle ensues. It's pretty wild. Ultimately, Boba Fett returns to Darth Vader, basically telling him he wasn't able to capture the pilot, but he only has a name, and that name is Skywalker. Darth Vader is visibly angered and shaken, realizing what this must be, that this must be his son, that everyone lied to him and his child survived. As a fan of the Star Wars films, there is a really fun idea here that they never explicitly say that Darth Vader is aware this is his kid, but we know as the audience and as an outside viewer, they just know that for some reason this angers him, and for some reason he's fixated on the idea that this pilot is a Skywalker. But of course we know Vader is Luke's father, and so we see this dynamic from him of he is trying to capture Luke and convert him to the dark side, to join him, to rule the galaxy by his side, and Luke is just trying to stop Vader, having no idea of his parentage and knowing that he just wants to stop this menace. This first arc also really emphasizes this idea that Luke is after training. After losing Obi-Wan in the first film, he is kind of rudderless. He knows he's trying to be a Jedi and that he is not a Jedi yet. He is still completely untrained. We also know that it's not until Empire Strikes Back that he knows about Yoda and Dagobah and completes his Jedi training. So what happens in the interim? What happens after the really big victory of the Death Star, but before the events of Empire Strikes Back? Well, we have a Luke that doesn't want to wait around. He wants to find more training. He wants to find any breadcrumbs that will lead him into becoming the Jedi he knows he must be. And that's a really recurring plot thread as well. Throughout several of the story arcs, we have Luke trying to get Jedi training and mentorship. That first story arc is also responsible to having Luke acquire Obi-Wan's old Jedi journal from his home on Tatooine. This is also a really cool narrative device that Jason uses throughout his run. Basically, there are whole issues that are just excerpts or journal entries from Obi-Wan that Luke is presumably reading, and we as the audience just get to see the actions noted in the diary play out before our eyes. So sometimes it's in the form of flashbacks for Obi-Wan Kenobi, or even a story Obi-Wan heard from Master Yoda. And again, these issues are scattered throughout the omnibus, so we get treated to these diary entry issues every so often, and it was a really cool narrative framing device. Another earlier story arc in this collection is Showdown on the Smuggler's Moon. This was one of my favorites from the collection, where we have Luke going to this planet that's basically a smuggler's moon. It's just like what it sounds like. It's a really wretched hive of scum and villainy. There are gangsters, gangs, crime lords, there's bounty hunters, and all sorts of other shady activity that happens in this place, but Luke believes it to be the site of an old Jedi temple, and so he's trying to find training and any information he can. We know that this area also has some kind of arena that's ruled over by this creepy hut, and anyway, Luke gets caught up in it. He fights this other guy that seems to have a lightsaber, and tries to get some practical fighting training being exploited and thrown into the arena, only to have Princess Leia, Han Solo, and company try to save him once he gets captured. That was just a really fun story arc that introduced some other old Jedi artifacts. It incorporated some new characters. This other figure that gave him some lightsaber training, we actually find out was a spy for the Empire and part of this elite Scar Trooper team for the Empire. He shows up as a recurring villain throughout the omnibus as well. But it again just laid the groundwork, and it was really fun to see how Luke kind of stepped in it trying to get his training. That's again another common little plot device that shows up. But just really well done. It really expanded the world of Star Wars to me even more, and I really loved it as another early adventure. After that, we also have the big crossover event, Vader Down, where basically Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker get in kind of a dogfight in the orbit over this sort of barren planet, and they both get shot down and crash land onto this deserted planet. From there, we have not only Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, but we also have all of those rebel heroes, along with Dr. Aphra and her murder robots, all trying to secure their respective people. Vader's trying to get Luke, Luke's trying to stop Vader, Leia and Han are trying to save Luke, Aphra's trying to help get Luke for Vader. It's just all this tangled web. It leads to all sorts of fights and conflicts, and it is absolutely astounding. This was the first kind of bigger crossover Star Wars event, I believe, from this Disney era, and I have to say it was really well done. Some of the crossover issues, everything felt like it had a singular voice and vision, and I think that really worked for the storytelling. And that's something I'll say throughout the whole collection. Even if we got Dr. Aphra issues, or we got Vader issues, or what have you, everything had the consistent voice that really just never pulled you out of the storytelling. You're left fully immersed, and again, singular vision, and I think the fact that that came all from Jason Aaron was a big help to that. I won't go into every single story in this omnibus, but another one worth mentioning is the Rebel Jail plotline. This one is really a plotline for Princess Leia, Dr. Aphra, and Sana, who is another rogue smuggler type figure, not dissimilar to Han Solo, who is a recurring major character in this story arc. At any rate, this whole story revolves around Sana and Princess Leia effectively getting Dr. Aphra turned into this jail that sort of orbits a sun, and it's this like high security jail for Empire people. Anyway, this bad crew of people show up and try to cause sort of a jailbreak or to try to kill some of the people in the jail, and we have Sana and Princess Leia liberate Dr. Aphra to basically try to save as much of the prisoners as they can, stop the invading foe, and survive the night. It's a really fun story arc. It's, again, more female character dominant, but I think it was absolutely well done and a really great entry in this series. Another story arc called Yoda's Secret War takes place in a kind of flashback for the most part, and it's that diary entry I mentioned earlier, but it involves Yoda hearing a call on the Force, drawing him to this planet that's overrun by tribal kids and teenagers who are using these objects that are sort of Force empowered, but also resistance to direct Force contact. Really weird, and Yoda's trying to help these children and all these bloodthirsty factions to try to find their way in the Force, but he realizes that the Force here is a little bit different, and these Force users have some ways of accessing the Force that Yoda wants training in himself. He's basically banished to find the heart in this Force-sensitive mountain. He encounters this other kid who's very strong in this kind of Force, who trains him up even more. They discover that the mountain is actually a sentient being who is Force-sensitive himself, and it all culminates with kind of little Yoda versus a giant mountain kind of creature. It's a very impressive story arc, and I think one of my favorite aspects of it was Luke is reading this story in the journal in present day, traveling to the planet as he's reading. It basically leads to a present day conflict with some of the outstanding characters, and it's a really cool weaving of past and present. Ultimately, Luke finds that he doesn't have any real thing he can glean from this planet, but it was a really interesting way to incorporate those journal issues with a present day story arc. The final story I really want to showcase in this volume, there are more of course, but the last story arc I really want to spend time on is this one called The Screaming Citadel. This is primarily a Luke Skywalker, Dr. Aphra story. Basically takes place where Dr. Aphra shows up, basically saying that she has some kind of Jedi artifact that if they can activate it, has kind of the sentient, kind of computerized personality profile, spirit of this old Jedi person from centuries ago. So basically she says, if we can activate this, this will give you the Jedi training you need. And as a kind of rogue archaeologist, I just want to know what's in here. I want the secret knowledge. I want to just study it from an archaeological standpoint. So if you're in to help me, you are welcome to have the training from this Jedi Master that's presumably in this artifact somehow, in some way. However, the caveat is the only way to activate it is to get it activated by this queen on some kind of planet. She does this annual festivity where she likes to just collect and observe kind of the most unique living beings in the galaxy. And so every year people show up and make their offering of unusual specimens for her to observe, things like that, granting a favor in return. So Aphra shows up with a Jedi, hoping that this will be enough to earn favor and activate this artifact. She leaves out the fact that this might be a little more involved, that Luke might not be able to leave. And of course, they show up. Luke accidentally demonstrates the Force, even though they're supposed to be undercover. The Queen and her people dismiss every other offering and basically say, hey, stay. You have my favor. I will grant you this request, but you need to stay. We find out that the Queen is actually some kind of weird, vampiric, kind of like life energy draining fiend, and she loves to thirst on Jedi, which are all but extinct, and she wants to basically use Luke's life essence and drink it and kind of be this evil master. We have this sort of like parasitic creature that she's sort of the hive queen over, that all of her minions are sort of possessed by these kind of bugged parasite things. Anyway, it's like one part horror, one part action, sci-fi, and space thriller, and I really loved it. Like a lot of the other stories, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Sana, and the others really have to show up and help save the day, but they get involved. It's just a really great story that I love to see. This storyline also uses Black Sandton really well, the sort of gnarly, crazy other Wookiee that we get to see in a lot of these comic book editions. He shows up throughout the series as well, and this is maybe one of my favorite moments of him in the whole collection. Just a really great story. It's towards the end of the collection. It's the last big kind of overarching story arc, and then there's a couple other little sort of individual interconnected issues at the back. But overall, just an outstanding collection that I feel like each and every story feel authentic and can be slotted in next to each other between episodes 4 and 5. Just absolutely well done. The collection had a healthy amount of extras at the back, a cover art gallery, an interview, etc. And now that that's out of the way, let's go give it a grade. It should be no surprise with the way I've been gushing about this for the last 20 minutes, but with its authentic looking art style that captures the likeness and spirit of the original trilogy, coupled with a narrative voice that seems to want to write a love letter to this franchise more than most adaptation kind of books I've ever seen, The Comic Book Report is happy to give Star Wars by Jason Aaron Omnibus an A. This is a must-read for those that are both Star Wars fans and comic book fans. This feels right at home between those Star Wars original trilogy movies and is an absolute welcome addition to my bookcase. The storylines were all very unique, but well interconnected, all things considered. This is a perfect place to begin reading Star Wars comics for anyone interested, and it definitely has my recommendation. Please consider checking out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, if you want to get your own copy. And until next time, this has been The Comic Book Report. Don't forget to leave a like and your comment letting me know what you think. Have a good one.